Welcome aboard. You're listening to Flight Plan Quick Consults, your go-to podcast for veterinary insights that are fast, focused, and designed to elevate your practice. I'm your host, Brenda Medina from Encore Veterinary Consulting. Whether you're between appointments or heading into a strategy session, we've got takeoff ready tips, tools, and takeaways to keep your team soaring. So buckle up and let's chart today's course to leadership in action. Today's panel includes Carol Hurst, Josh Vaisman, and Brandon Hess. Carol, tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Hi there. I'm Carol Hurst, and I've spent about 20 years in the veterinary profession, starting as a credentialed technician and working my way through just most corners of the practice. I love the medicine. That's what got me into the field and what kind of drives me behind the scenes. But what I love is the people. And what I've grown into is building strong teams, shaping healthy culture, and creating client experiences that are intentional instead of transactional. These days, I work as a consultant and speaker, educator, and support veterinary teams around leadership and communication, wellness, and practice operations. I am especially passionate about helping practices grow without burning out the people who make them work. Outside of work, I'm a mom and a boxer dog mom. I am a not so secret plant collector, and I got more into drawing lately, and that's me.
You've been to my house, Carol. How does your collection compare to my husband's?
I was pretty impressed, but I've gotten a little bit out of control the last several months. So
Maybe he inspired you.
maybe.
All right, next up is Josh Vaisman from Denver, Colorado.
Hey, Brenda, Carol, Brandon, thanks for having me here today. I have seen Carol's plant collection on camera, and it is impressive. Carol is an amazing human being, so I think just meeting with her for that purpose is sufficient enough. But if you want to see an impressive plant collection, set up a meeting with Carol. I am the founder of Flourish Veterinary Consulting, started that organization back in 2017, but I've been in vet med since 1998, which is wild to think. I am pushing 30 years now in this lovely profession of ours. I'm very much fueled by a mission and a belief. I think that veterinary people are some of the best people on the planet, and they deserve to find joy and fulfillment in their work every day that they do it. And that doesn't happen enough. And so what we do at Flourish is we take the science of human thriving. I have a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, finishing up a master's in applied communications, positive communication specifically, and conflict management. We take science and we make it usable to help veterinary workplaces create workplaces of human thriving. And that's really what fuels me every day and gets me out of bed.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for being here. And last but certainly not least is Brandon Hess.
Thank you. As much as I want to bring my wife into the plant competition, I'm gonna stay out of it because I don't want her to buy anymore. But I think plants are a consistent theme here for sure. But my name is Brandon. I'm a certified veterinary practice manager, certified compassion fatigue professional, and HR professional. Been working in the industry since 2008 as an entry level assistant and ER, and then I've just worked through a variety of different practices. Been speaking and consulting. Basically full time since 2016. With a psychology degree, a bachelor's in psychology, I enjoy the employee wellness side of things. I also enjoy applying that to the practices that I am a managing owner of. So I have three practices. Two one doctor, one seven doctor practice. The seven doctor practice was actually my first consulting client with you, Brenda. Match made in heaven. You knew what you were doing there. So what I enjoy doing is I enjoy practicing what I preach. So the things that I speak on, the things that I consult on, I do in my own practice, and I just enjoy supporting other veterinary professionals and other practices as much as I possibly can. So thank you for inviting me.
Love having you here. All right, let's dig right into our first question. I'm going to hand it over to Josh to begin our conversation. How do you balance being approachable with setting clear boundaries as a leader?
Brenda, how many hours do we have to talk about this question? Um, Yeah, approachability and boundaries. So a word that I hear very often is accountability. Like I'll often, sit down with a practice manager or medical director or hospital owner or some executive at some organization somewhere. And what they're most interested in is how do I ensure accountability? Either it's because they feel like it's lacking in their organization, or they're concerned that if I do all this nice person stuff, I'm putting that in air quotes, then people won't have any incentive to be accountable. And so, how do I balance those things? Often, the first thing I say to them is that accountability is not something we deliver, it's something that people choose to step into. Accountability is a lagging indicator, it is a result of people who feel empowered and engaged. So if we create environments of empowerment, which is agency, competency, purpose, right? And we support engagement, we give them a clear reason why this work is valuable to them. It adds value to their life, like they have a real indication of that. They see that they are valued in the organization. We will have accountable people. So our job is to create clear goals, clear expectations, respectfully, assertively, and kindly stick to those goals and expectations. Understand that we are working with human beings who have human needs, and our job is to curate and meet those needs so that they can deliver on those expectations. And when they do so, celebrate the heck out of it. And when they fall short, have a clear, respectful conversation about it. I think sometimes people in leadership think that it's either I lay down the hammer or I don't do anything at all. That is not assertive communication. That's just being a jerk or being avoidant, right? So, I mean, I think a reasonable conversation that we should be hearing often in veterinary organizations is, Brandon, you seem like the kind of person who's really dedicated to your work, and you seem like being a team player is really important to you, which is why I'm a little surprised that you've been late to work 3 times in the last week. Can we talk about what's happening here? That is a quote accountability conversation that it invites conversation. And if we can do that consistently over time, we will be both approachable and goals oriented. Rant over.
Rant loved.
Thank you.
Carol, how do you balance being approachable with setting clear boundaries as a leader?
So this topic, it's so relevant for me personally because I look at it from the opposite standpoint because I struggled so much as kind of a budding manager with being approachable. So it wasn't about setting boundaries for me as a leader because I had that down. Like I could do the black and white all day long. I could hold the standards all day long. But for me, vulnerability felt so much like weakness for a variety of reasons that we won't get into. But, I came into the second practice I was at, as this budding practice manager, and I could do all the things, right? I could, answer any question. I knew our employee manual. And my practice owner would often joke if I made like a little mistake or something, he'd go, "Oh, I see a chink in your armor." And immediately that just felt like so I can't make a mistake, right? And so that vulnerability was so hard for a long time. And it felt like weakness. And then the more that you learn about leadership and being a role model and what connection looks like in your team, the more that you realize that they need to see that, right? They need to see that it's okay to make mistakes. They need to see that you're a real person and what drives you. And that, I was in the gritty with them, but it took me a long time to show that, it affected me too, right? And so I think my message is, if you're that leader that doesn't want to show vulnerability because it feels like it's a weakness, it could be your greatest superpower. It could be your greatest strength, because if your team can see that you're there with them, you're engaged with them, you're taking the time to connect with them, it's only going to make those bonds stronger, right? It's only going to make them respect you more because they see that you're in it. So I want that approachability to be intentional, right? Like, how can we make sure that we are taking the time to connect. Everyone has an open door policy, but if your team doesn't feel like they can come to you because you're never available, or when they do come to you, you're distracted, you're on your phone, or you're not making eye contact, how approachable is that really? Like, how do they feel like you're approachable? What are you doing to make sure you're approachable? So I think putting some of those systems in place for you, if this is hard, whether it's setting an alarm at 10 a.m. to come and walk the floor so that they can see that you're visible, whether it's scheduling, informal check-ins so that they're going to happen and your team knows that you're there and you're present. So just putting some intentionality around that approachability, I think to me is that balance.
I love everything that you had to say, especially around vulnerability. And it reminds me so much of the conversation you and I were having over the last couple of weeks around me being vulnerable with my team at one point in time and sharing my why, which was a very personal story about my grandparents and their relationship with their dog, and the power of that human animal bond. And it was definitely a pivotal point for my team and the relationship that I had with them. So love it. Vulnerability is just so big. Brandon.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a different approach to this and be vulnerable with the audience because I Josh said some things that were on my notes and Carol said some things that were on my notes and one thing that I did want to kind of chime in on just for the audience because I see managers and practice owners kind of get stuck in this accountability versus disciplinary action. Accountability is not disciplining someone. It could be having a conversation, it could be following up with them, it could be supporting them. So I think a lot of people avoid this word accountability and having conversations because it could be perceived as disciplinary action. And when it comes to accountability, it really is a leadership skill. And I always tell my staff like a great culture is a team that can hold each other accountable, and I don't have to get involved unless absolutely necessary. Like look out for each other. Hey, you're not supposed to be eating in this area, so on and so forth. When it comes to approachability, I resonated a little bit with Carol's story, just in that I've always struggled and gotten feedback with being approachable. I tend to have this kind of neutral look on my face, poker face is what some people kind of say. I tend to be thinking a lot when I'm walking down the hallway. I don't make eye contact with people because I'm focusing on the next meeting that I'm going to or whatever the meeting I just came from and changing my mindset for the next one. And I actually had someone tell me before, like, you never look at me in the eye or acknowledge me in the hallway. And that was one of the most valuable pieces of feedback that I've ever gotten, and it increased my awareness. I've always struggled with transparency. I've been in a lot of different leadership roles. I've been, captains of soccer teams, managers of retail departments. And I've always felt like a good manager is someone who's always the strongest, the most stoic. I don't sit and talk about my personal life. I don't share a whole lot. I changed that drastically a couple months ago when I stood in front of my team and cried for about 30 minutes about where I was in my own burnout and stuff like that. And it was amazing to see the level of support that I got after that. Really, really normalizing like, hey, I know you guys are burnout. I'm burnout too. And I think that really showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable. And I was vulnerable with my management team prior to that. And by being vulnerable, they were vulnerable with me. They shared where they were at with things. I didn't have to assume or dig or have this big conversation to really, dial down to, how things were going with them. So, I agree with all of it. I think everything that Carol and Josh have said, from accountability to vulnerability to the comment that Carol made about open door policies. That's almost like nailed across a chalkboard when I hear managers say that because I used to fall into this too. Open door policy. My door's open. There's a candy dish on my desk. I don't know why people don't come in my office, but it's things that we're going to talk about, in our episodes around, psychological safety and approachability and all those things. So, an open door policy is more than just having your door open and having a candy dish on your desk. It's being vulnerable and people trusting that if they come to you with the hardest thing that's going on in their life that's affecting their work performance, that you're not going to judge them and you're going to support them and you're not going to share it with anybody else and so on and so forth. So yeah, big topic and very, very timely for me. But I've noticed a lot of great results from just being vulnerable. and advocating for myself.
Thank you so much for sharing. So, our second question really ties into the first one a bit. What's the role of psychological safety in creating high performing teams? Josh, you want to kick us off?
Oh, I would love to. Um, I published a book a couple of years ago called Lead to Thrive. It is an evidence-based book on essentially a leadership model for creating thriving workplaces, high-performing, thriving veterinary workplaces. And the first pillar in the four P's pillar is psychological safety. I think it is utterly essential. The absence of psychological safety is a hard, cemented ceiling on the performance capacity of a team, period. If it's not there, there's only so much that teams can accomplish. It doesn't mean that they won't accomplish anything. No. What it means is that the magic that that team is capable of will forever be dormant because we as leaders will not have the information we need to unleash that magic. Withholding occurs in the absence of psychological safety. I don't understand. I've got the candy tray on my desk and the door is open. Why aren't people coming to talk to me? Because they are withholding things. Because it's far riskier to actually open their mouth than to keep it shut. That's the reality. And we have data that suggests that as much as 75% of veterinary teams report low levels of psychological safety. So that means that only about 25% of our veterinary organizations are actually creating spaces where those teams can reach their peak performance, where they can unlock their full potential. I think this is absolutely critical. And for leaders, one of the things I really appreciated about what Brandon and Carol were saying when they were talking about vulnerability was that at some point in time, they got feedback. All the people that were withholding the feedback from them, somebody somewhere along the lines had enough courage to overcome their fear and deliver that feedback. And both Brandon and Carol acted on it. They did something substantive in response to that feedback. As leaders, we must always be on the lookout for critical work-related feedback, for somebody opening their mouth and sharing something instead of withholding it that has something to do with work, some work-related topic, anything, whether it's us and our performance, our shortcomings, the shortcomings of others, an idea or suggestion for a way to make the practice better. As leaders, we've got to be on the alert for that. And as soon as we see one of those things happen, we got to celebrate it. We got to get curious about it. And then we got to do something with it because those gifts are rare. And if we want them to be more common, we have to show that it's worth it to do so.
Thank you. And I love your book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Thank you.
Brandon, the role of psychological safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh really kind of teed it up and put a bow on it for us. And I think when I think of psychological safety, I think of trust, and that's a word I've been using a lot in my practice, which is building trust, people trusting me with feedback, with just recently I had someone approach me and share something that ultimately was bullying in my workplace. And I would have never known, and the person trusted that they were going to bring it to me, and I wasn't going to go out into the practice and say, so and so told me this. So I think it's that conversation, it's that collaboration, it's that building trust. But the question is, how do you create that psychological safety in a practice where that may not have it, or how do you build trust if it's missing? One thing that I've started with my management team, and I built it out to my staff, is encouraging them to disagree with me. I always say I don't know everything. I certainly don't have the best ideas, and I almost liken it to a personal relationship. I always say my wife and I would have a very boring relationship if we just agreed on everything. If she never told me, hey, that's a dumb idea, or which she would never say, but that's how I perceive it. Or hey, how do we do things differently to improve our relationship? Essentially, I see the same thing in a workplace, which is you have to get this feedback. The best ideas I've ever gotten were from my team. They're not from conferences. I've gotten some great ideas from these podcasts that I've written down, but it's really having that conversation and encouraging them to disagree and challenge processes, and telling them, no question is a dumb question, no comment is a dumb comment. And for those of you that may not feel comfortable speaking out in a staff meeting or, in a conversation, let me provide you this, it was a confidential suggestion box. This year I've transitioned to not confidential, but a passive suggestion box so that I know who to follow up with. But it's really, kind of finding ways to create that trust. Anytime someone makes a suggestion, you have to act on it. Even if you don't take their suggestion, you have to follow up with them. You have to discuss it with them. Otherwise, it's going to really kind of send you backwards with that psychological safety and that trust because they're going to assume that it was a dumb suggestion or you don't care about their feedback, things that I hear from staff in employee workplace satisfaction surveys. So, those are some things that kind of come to mind, but I really have had success with encouraging my team to disagree with me. And I always tell them, there's always these misconceptions of like, if I say something, you're going to fire me. And I was like, when was the last time I fired someone for disagreeing with me? I said, don't throw a stapler at my head, but you can disagree with me. And when we walk out of this room, we can be on the same page, but this is the place to have these conversations. So, that's the way that I've been trying, which it's a constantly evolving thing, to create psychological safety in the workplace.
Awesome. I love it. Carol.
Whew, Brenda, coming after two true like experts in the field of psychological safety. I think, man, y'all just covered so much of the why behind it. I think the only thing I could add is from my personal from my personal experience, how do we turn that microscope or that magnifying glass inward and say, what kinds of behaviors may I be exhibiting as a leader that could stifle safety? Because I think some of the little things that can come up are ones that we wouldn't think about, right? Like, do I actually live our practices values? Or, do I make excuses for my behavior because of whatever reason? I've heard, all of them. But what behaviors can I exhibit to be a really good role model? Because man, like being in a leadership position can feel quite lonely and quite isolating because everyone is watching you. But I think that's a great opportunity for us to kind of challenge how we work and how we show up as a leader so that our team, we can help to build that trust and that safety with our actions.
Thank you. Thank you. Josh, can you let our audience know how to find your book?
Oh, yeah, it's available on Amazon. So just Google Lead to Thrive: The Science of Crafting a Positive Veterinary Culture
By Josh Vaisman.
by Josh Vaisman. Yep.
Any other tools that or resources anyone can think of? I think Josh's book says it all, right?
There's this is not meant to be a self-promotion, but I went through a certification. So Amy Edmondson is like the preeminent scholar on psychological safety. She teamed up with an organization out of England called Sarah's Change and created basically an assessment modality for organizations called the Fearless Scan, or the Psychological Safety Index Scan. The Fearless organization is the company that they have it under. I'm certified to do it. Like Flourish can do that, but it's not just us. Like anybody can. I think having it measured within an organization routinely is a really, really important thing. In large part because this is an elusive concept. It's very difficult to cultivate. To Brandon's point, you're kind of always working on it, which I think is one of the reasons why a lot of organizations, veterinary organizations, struggle with it, is because it is really, really hard to build up this level. So measuring it routinely is one way of showing that we take this seriously and we're going to do something about it. And then having a third party, anybody who's PSI scan certified, doesn't have to be us, having a third party conduct that for you and help facilitate the conversation around it can be really valuable too, especially if the team is not feeling particularly psychologically safe. I mean, if I as a hospital owner go to the team and say, hey, we're going to get psychologically safe now, okay, talk about what's in the way. That's probably not going to go very well most of the time, so having someone help can be really beneficial.
Thank you, Josh. Well, thanks for flying with us today on Flight Plan Quick Consults. If today's insights helped you climb to new heights, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your crew. Until next time, keep your mission clear, your team aligned, and your practice soaring.